Hey y'all, and welcome to the Hillbilly Chicken Ranch. I'm Susan, I'm your hostess, and welcome to my kitchen. Once again, we're going to be using the Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving, and you can find this book on Amazon. You can go back in some of my videos and find links to this. You can look at my list of the items that we like. There's many ways to find that. And we are going to be making the barbecue sauce recipe found on 260. And I'm going to follow the recipe until I get to my last ingredient. And I'm going to add some hickory smoke to this. We like the hickory barbecue sauce, so I thought the hickory smoke would add that flavor. And this is the hickory smoke that I'll be using. There are other liquid smokes out there. This is another hickory smoke flavor. So I could use either one of these and that would work fine. We are going to need 20 cups of chopped cord peeled tomatoes, and I have gone ahead and pureed mine. We're going to need 2 cups of finely chopped onions, 3 cloves of garlic finely chopped, 1 tablespoon of hot pepper flakes, and 1 tablespoon of celery seed, 1½ cups of light brown sugar packed, 1 cup of vinegar, 1/3 cup of lemon juice, 2 tablespoons of salt, 1½ tablespoons of ground mace, or you could substitute ground nutmeg if you do not have mace, 1 tablespoon of dry mustard, 1 teaspoon of ground ginger, and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. I've already got my tomatoes chopped. I've already got my onions chopped. I just need to chop my garlic and we'll be ready to go. In front of you, I've got 1 gallon plus some of my tomatoes. And we're going to start with a small bucket. I just wanted to show you that up close. We're going to measure out 20 cups. I already got 4 cups in my pot. And I'm just going to continue to scoop out until I have reached 20 cups. That's 8 cups. Cups. $16 cups. And 20 cups. I'm going to transfer this over to my other container and put it back in the fridge because I have more tomatoes to do. Okay, my next ingredient is finely chopped onions. I did not finely chop my onions, but they are chopped. And this contains 4 cups. I'm going to take out 2 cups of onions and we're going to add it to our tomatoes. And that's 1 cup. And I'm just going to keep you on the tomatoes for right now while I get the rest of these onions in there. And my 2nd cup. we have 2 cups of onions now in our tomatoes. He calls for 3 cloves of garlic to be minced, and 1 clove of garlic would equal 1 teaspoon. 3 teaspoons equal a tablespoon, so that's how we're going to measure our garlic. And I'll put that in our pot. We're going to put this back in the fridge. Our recipe calls for 1 tablespoon of hot pepper flakes, which I do not have on hand. So I'm going to use some cayenne, and I'm using the same amount of cayenne. It may make it a little spicy, but that's alright. We're going to use 1 tablespoon of celery seeds. And that's my celery seeds, y'all. Move these out of the way. We need 2 tablespoons of salt. This is a Himalayan salt and canning salt mix. They're both good in canning, and it's what I have on hand right now, so that's what I'm using. We need 1 tablespoon of dry mustard. This is my dry ground mustard, y'all. One tablespoon. One teaspoon of ground ginger. One teaspoon of ground cinnamon. And 1½ tablespoons of ground mace, and this is a 1½ Yeah, 1½ so this is a ½ tablespoon here, and then I have a full tablespoon here. That's a ½ tablespoon. And 1 tablespoon of ground mace. Now in place of that mace, you can also use nutmeg, and you'd use the same measurement if you didn't have mace on hand. Okay, the recipe calls for 1½ cups of packed light brown sugar. That's 1 cup. 1/2 cup. It calls for 1 cup of white vinegar, but I am using apple cider vinegar because I have that on hand. And it calls for 1/3 cup of lemon juice. Now I'm going to add my liquid smoke, and I may add more as I go along. We're going to start out with a couple of tablespoons and go from there. I'm going to give this a good stir. And we're going to get this on to cook. And I'm going to give that a little taste test. And just so y'all know, I wasn't supposed to add the brown sugar and the lemon juice and the vinegar yet. I was supposed to add it later on, but it's already in the pot now, so I can't do anything about that. Just going to have to watch my liquids. I'm to cook this down to 1/4. I'm sorry, y'all, my book's over on the counter. I would have brought my tomatoes and all that to a boil on high heat and stirred. Reduce the heat and covered and boil gently until the vegetables were soft for about 30 minutes. We pretty much skipped that step. I'm still going to boil my liquids down. Then you would work in small batches to remove the seeds with a large hole sieve or food mill, and you want it to coarsely puree this in a food processor. I left the seeds in, and the seeds don't bother us. You're going to return the mixture to the saucepan and boil, stirring occasionally until it's cooked down by 1/4. Then you would add the brown sugar, the lemon juice, the mace, the mustard, and the ginger, and the cinnamon, and return it to a boil over medium heat, stirring occasionally. You would reduce the heat and boil gently, stirring frequently until the mixture is thickened to the consistency of a thin commercial barbecue sauce, about 30 minutes. Meanwhile, you're supposed to be preparing your jars. My jars are already in the sterilization process. I've already sterilized my lids, so we're ahead of the game on that, and we will be back once this mixture is cooked down. While I'm waiting on that, I wanted to let y'all know that I also have 1/2 gallon of tomato juice that I'm going to be canning. That was off my tomatoes. I want this sauce to be thick, so I removed the juice, and I still have 1 gallon and 1 cup of tomatoes. So I may do another batch of barbecue sauce with that and do a different barbecue sauce. This is my first time with this recipe, so you know, we do make mistakes. Thankfully, most mistakes will not cost us our lives. I say that in jest, but you know, if you don't can properly, you can basically create botulism and cause somebody to die. So you want to use safe canning methods. As long as you're canning, you follow the rules. Okay, y'all, we have come to a boil. I've lowered my heat. I've got my timer set for 30 minutes. It has reduced a little bit, not near as much as they said it would reduce, but it may finish reducing in this 30-minute period. I did add another 2 tablespoons of the hickory smoke, and I added about 4 tablespoons of my tomato powder just to thicken the sauce up a little bit, because I do like a thicker sauce. It really didn't change the flavor much, adding the tomato powder, and it is going to be a spicy barbecue sauce. And I can tell my onions have started to really cook down, so this is going to be really good. And I think changing the vinegar out from white vinegar to apple cider vinegar have really made a difference in the flavor. But I'm going to keep stirring because I do not want this to stick. And I'm going to get my jars reheating, even though they're hot in this. This is still really hot. I'm going ahead and turn my burner on it and get them reheating. And we will be back when it's ready to can. Okay, y'all, I have played around with this recipe and played around with this recipe. I'm not really satisfied with the end product, but what I have discovered is if you crush the tomatoes first, you yield more barbecue sauce. I have doubled the brown sugar. I used, of course, apple cider vinegar. I would suggest using less ground mace and adding the nutmeg. So I would probably go back to 1 tablespoon and 1 tablespoon of each. I doubled the dry mustard. I doubled the ground ginger. I doubled the ground cinnamon. I added 4 tablespoons of tomato powder, 4 tablespoons of hickory smoke, and I added 1 can of tomato paste to this at the end. And I added in 1 can of crushed pineapple because it was so tart, it just wasn't good. And it's not a Memphis barbecue sauce by any means. It looks like barbecue sauce. I can still taste the mace in it and the nutmeg. So I'm not sure about using this recipe again, but I have made all my notes in case I decide to do it. It may change its flavor as it sits in the jars. We're going to try it out and see, because we're not going to let it go to waste. But there is my sauce, y'all. There's my sauce. And the recipe was only supposed to make 3 pints. As y'all can tell, I got a lot more than 3 pints because I didn't follow the recipe exactly. You know, that's one of my faults, is I don't always follow the recipes. But we're going to jar this up and hope for the best. Maybe it will turn out better as it ages in the jar. I'm going to go ahead and pull out my jars, and we're going to start jarring this up. Now I'm going to pour off some of this hot water because I don't need it in my canner. Had a little trouble there grabbing jars. See if I can pan you up just a little bit. There we go. I've got 9 pints in here. I'm probably going to have more than 9 pints of sauce. And if I do, I'll just do a second batch in the hot water bath. Now I'm going to pour some of this hot water back in the bath. I've heard other canners say that they did not like this sauce recipe, and I'm tending to agree with them. And we are to get this to a 1/2 inch headspace. Now when I take it out of the jars, I may continue to experiment with it and try to figure out what would make this a better sauce. Set that aside. Finish my jars up. We're going to see after we debubble if we need to add more liquid to the jars. And my 1/2 inch gauge, 1, 2, 3rd tooth. Let me grab a spoon. Those 3 jars are good. That one's got too much. Add it to that. That one's good. That one's good. This one needs a little bit. Okie dokie. we're going on to our next stage, and that will be to wipe the rims. I always start with the jars in the front. Are the ones that are closest to me. I'm just going to give them another rub down because I had a little bit of tomatoes on top. And we're going to pull out some of my lids. And I'm going to get these ringed up. Finger tight. Well, I can't get that jar. Let me move these out of the way. I'll go ahead and put these in the canner. Move this one out a little bit so I can get to it. Finger tight. Give me another towel. I'm going to go ahead and pull these jars out a little bit because they are very close together. Grab my lids. And my rings. Rings or bands, whichever one you call them. Finger tight. Finger tight. And finger tight. If you didn't notice, there was no citric acid added to this barbecue sauce. The only citric acid was added was the lemon juice. And the lemon juice and the vinegar would make it acidic enough to water bath can. And if you're ever curious about how much acidity you have in your food, I can't say the word, You can buy those pH test strips and use them. And you can figure out if you have enough acid to water bath can, or if you need to pressure can. So that's another little tip. Not only that, but you want your pH to be at a certain pH for water bath canning. And there is a lady on YouTube that talks about the pH. And I'll try to remember to share the link, because the information she gives is so important, especially to new canners. We're going to get the last 3 in our canner. You want to make sure you have enough water in your canner that you have 1 inch above your jars. And I do. We're going to get these started. I'm going to pull out my other water bath canner, and we're going to get some jars sterilized. I'm going to put this in my oven, keep it hot in a smaller pot, and we're going to have a few more jars made up. We have steam coming off our canner, and we are doing the hot water bath method. Once the steam comes off, it means the water inside is boiling, and we want to process 20 minutes, and you're going to wait 5 minutes to remove jars and store. And it doesn't say, well, the recipe's for pints, so it's 20 minutes for pints. Doesn't say if you're making quart jars of this up. And I don't know anybody really that would make a quart jar of this up. And I've got more jars back here, and I've added a half pint just in case I need it. Ball does not recommend that you ever process less than 4 jars of anything. And I know y'all are talking, you hear my belly talking. So what I always do is, if I don't have a full canner, and I only have 3 jars of something, I might go ahead and just leave another jar of water in there, so that there are actually 4 jars in there. I'm not going to seal it or anything, but it's just another jar in there to assure that I'm processing everything correctly. We will be back when this timer goes off. Okay, y'all, my timer is fixing to go off, and we will be removing these jars from this canner. I have jars sterilizing in my back canner for the rest of the sauce, and I will do that off camera, but I will show you at the end of the video exactly how many jars I got out of this. My crock pot food is almost ready. My husband should be home from work soon. It's getting late in the afternoon. It's been 109 degrees today. That's the heat index, and I think our actual temperature was around 94 degrees, but our heat index outside was 109. Our chickens are not laying as well as they were. The turkeys are definitely not laying. The ducks are still laying eggs. We have extra water out there for all of our birds because of the heat. They are staying in the shade, and that's a good thing. So as soon as this cools off for 5 minutes, we will remove the jars, and I'll be right back. Alrighty, y'all, it's about time to start unloading this canner. I'm waiting for the time to count down. Still waiting on my pot in the back to get hot enough to sterilize the jars. I've already had my lid sterilizing for my next batch. I'm just going to cover that up. And it's time. And there is still a lot of steam coming off this canner, y'all. It is very, very hot. We have barbecue sauce. and they are pinging as they're coming out of the canner, which is a good sign that they are going to all seal. Woo, they're pinging in the canner. And we have 9 pints so far. I wonder how many more we're going to get out of this, and if we'll like it when we try it out. Well, here's my supper, y'all. The beef roast, rice, potatoes, peas, and carrots, and onions, and the package of beef stew mix. That's what this was in my crock pot. I've got some fresh tomato sliced and some of the squash relish from the Amish community, and that's going to be supper tonight. Last of my jars out of my canner. We're going to call this a canning success. Because we have 12 pints of barbecue sauce that's homemade. And I did do another taste test on this, the last sauce, as it was sitting in the oven waiting for my jars to sterilize, and it tasted much better after it had set for a while. So this is going to be a successful recipe. I've changed the ball canning recipe, but I did not change the pH on it, which is wonderful. And I'm just going to set my jars out here. I'm going to rewash these jars. Just because there might be some tomato product in my bath water. So they will get rewashed, these last jars. And that's how you can when you don't have enough jars to can in your water bath canner, is you just add however many jars you need to get that water up to 1 inch above your jars. And my jars came directly out of the other canner into this canner, and it was already hot. I really didn't have to add any water or anything to it. I just took my jars full of water and set them in the pot. So we are done with another canning adventure, y'all. And I would say it is a success. We will do a taste test on these in the near future. I am going to let them sit on my shelf for at least a month before we do that. And I'm going to give my back a break, and then I got to get back to canning because I've got a lot of stuff to do yet.